Okay, back to you, Sukanya.
Thank you, Jane. Yes, so we wanted to just share a little bit about how we have found that SF practice fits very well into the cultural context of Asia. I mean, as we all know, with solution-focused practice, it's respectful, and we automatically we pay attention to the uniqueness of the individual. And this is the mindset that we embody in our work. Um, the postmodern approaches, as we know, always place a greater emphasis on the social and cultural factors, as well as what's co-constructed between people, as compared with other traditional approaches, which look more at the individual's inner experience. So all of this also means that SF is naturally very adaptable when working in different cultural spheres, cultural contexts. So I also wanted to mention the not knowing stance, and we talk a lot about this, the not knowing stance of the SF coach or the SF therapist, which will automatically, it invites our clients to share their own experiences, their strengths and their resources, which makes it very easy to adapt, no matter who your client is, where they're from, what their cultural context is. I wanted to mention just briefly colleagues in Taiwan. In this book, there's a chapter of the work that's being done in Taiwan on team coaching, for example, and they've used, interestingly, variations on the miracle question, where instead of asking the miracle question, they're essentially asking the same question, but using suppose. And that works well. So again, this highlights the adaptability of SF. And finally, the emphasis on small steps. So there are a lot of Chinese proverbs that mention small steps. So, a long journey can be covered only by taking one step at a time. So in SF practice, we always help our clients to focus more on the small steps that they're taking, but these steps which are very important. So in a way, these proverbs also align with the overall SF mindset. So that's just a very brief overview of the cultural factors. I'm going to hand back to Jane.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, I moved to Singapore in 2008, and one of the things I was really interested in, I wasn't SF trained at the time, I did CBT, and I kept going to all these local trainings saying, how is this the same? How is this different in the Singapore or in the Asian context, and didn't find much useful information coming back. And it was only when I trained in SF with Debbie where there was a real appreciation for the cultural context and how we might work respectfully. And this is something that really stuck with me. So I don't speak Mandarin. My children do, which I'm very jealous of, but I love the language and I love how much is encapsulated in a single character. And so for me, really sort of embodies SF listening. So this is the character ting, which means to listen. And it's made up of all these different parts. So obviously, we listen with our ears to what our client is saying. We listen with our eyes in terms of looking what the client might be communicating non-verbally. The idea is that we're 10, which fits wonderfully with SF scaling. We give somebody our 100% attention when we're listening, and we're listening as if every client that we're working with is a king, as important as a king. And we're also listening with our heart. And I think that's where the cultural part comes from me. We're really sort of respectful of what does this person in front of us want? What's important to this person? What's important in their context, which, might much be more about family culture or organizational culture rather than national culture. I mean, culture is such a broad term. But if we listen in all of these ways in this entirety, the idea is that we can sort of become as one heart with our clients. So I love this. So I just wanted to share that with you as a nice reminder of what we should be doing when we work with our clients. And just sharing, building on what Sukanya said in terms of sort of, so I come from the UK, which is very much more of sort of an individualistic culture. And in Asia, cultures place much more emphasis on the group and group as a collective and harmony and kind of everybody working together, whether that's in, if I do a lot of life coaching, that might be with a family. If you work at executive coaching or team coaching, it's that the team is important. So I think what SF does really nicely is it because we ask relationship questions, no matter who we're working with or where in the world we're working, relationship questions are part of the model. But what it allows is the balance to be what the client needs it to be. So if they're much more focused on group harmony and how the team's working together, then we can build on that. If they're interested in much more about kind of themselves and what's going to be different in their life and for them, we can focus on that. So that fits really well. And another really important concept here is the idea of faith. It's not okay to kind of lose faith in front of people who are important to you, whether again that's family or in the work context. So the idea of kind of airing your dirty laundry in public and sharing problems is not something that is okay in this context. So people tend to often avoid seeking help. And I think what SF does really nicely is we're not looking to name, blame, and shame. We're really looking on what is this, what's working well already and what do people want to see even better happening. So that fits really well with the context. Another concept that's important, the idea of filial piety, which doesn't just mean your sort of family as in your parents, but the idea of sort of people who are older and wiser and have more experience to you are looked up. There's a sort of very much a social hierarchy. And what that can mean is that it's very hard to share problems. You're not going to criticize your boss and say what's wrong. It's much better to keep quiet. Again, you wouldn't be sort of criticizing your parents. And again, what SF does nicely is it works with, well, we're not looking at the problems, we're looking at things being better. How it does play into coaching, a lot of people come to coaching assuming you're the sort of the older, wiser expert and you're going to tell them what to do, which is obviously, we all know it's not what coaching is about, but sometimes there might need to be sort of more attention paid to the coaching process and that we're not here to give advice. And again, going back to Sukanya's point about Proverbs, the idea of, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. So people often kind of really resonate with that. But also there is a sense of you might need to sort of prove your credibility and build up trust. And so some of that might come through things like having your website or your chemistry call where you do share your expertise as well as telling them about the coaching process. Another concept is the idea of modesty. So it's not culturally appropriate to kind of blow your own trumpet or anybody else's. So one of the tools that we use in solution-focused approach is giving compliments. I know there are people in the world who've left compliments aside and said we shouldn't be doing those. But if you do, in the Asian context, we wouldn't be giving direct compliments. It's much more appropriate to ask or share an indirect compliment through a question such as, wow, how did you do that? How did you figure that out? So we just need to be mindful that if we're giving compliments, that's done in a cultural appropriate way. And the idea people here are very pragmatic. They want to move forward. So SF fits very nicely because we're not spending a long time uncovering the past and the history and the problems. We're looking where are they now and where do they want to move forward. So we could have done a whole talk just on this itself, but we wanted to give a little bit of a flavor, especially for those of you who don't work in this context. And through some of the talks that you'll be hearing from now, some of these themes will come through. So I'm going to hand over to our wonderful set of speakers. So that one of the best things I find about being an editor is being able to share other people's stories, people who are doing amazing work, but wouldn't otherwise be writing about them. So we have 4 of them today. So we're going to start off with our colleague Keisuke Taketani in Japan, talking about graphic coaching, unlocking solutions with focus and clarity. I'm then going to hand over to Benny Tan, who's going to talk about solution-focused sales conversations. He's based in Singapore. Dian sadly couldn't join us because she's on a retreat, but she has done an amazing presentation. She's from Indonesia and going to talk, she's a sex coach, so she's going to talk about how we address sexual shame with solution-focused coaching. And then we're going to hand over to Edwin Choy, who's currently in China, but based in Singapore normally, who does a lot of work in the Singapore prison service, doing group coaching with incarcerated fathers. So we have some amazing things for you. And afterwards, we're going to put you in breakout rooms to talk with each other about what's inspired you from the talk today or what ideas might you take away. So as you're listening, just be thinking what's inspiring you as you're listening. And let me hand it. So just say we'll do Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, please hold them, write them down, or put them in the chat, but we'll come back to them after all of the presentations have happened. So let me hand it over to my colleague, Keisuke.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane, Devi, and Sukanya. My name is Keisuke. I'm calling in from Japan, and I've been practicing SF. I started with SFBT almost 10 years ago, 12, 10, 15, yeah, ish. I don't know exactly when I started, but my wife started even before that, so I've been with SF for a while. And I did take a coaching training, so I have coaching. And before that, I become a coach. I became a facilitator. So I moved on from facilitator to coach. And on the side, I was doing the graphic design and visual thinking. So that's all merged into, why don't I do graphic coaching? Because people do talk about graphic facilitation all over. If you are familiar with facilitation and coaching industry, graphic facilitation everywhere. Why we don't call it graphic coaching? Is it there? I start Googling, and there was not enough information, graphic coaching or visual coaching. Then I started digging into it. And Jen, should I share the screen? Yeah, let's see. One moment. Where is here? Do you see my screen? No? Yep, good. I keep it open as not in the screen share because I will lose everyone's face if I share the whole screen. But visualization and SF, I think, is very integrated easily because lots of questions that SF ask how you see the situation, how do you envision possibilities, and can you paint the vivid pictures, or how can you visualize, like even in your mind, I suppose, can you see actual room and there and here? So the SF questions are already, to me, very imaginative in their mind's eye. So those see, envision, paint that can easily come to actual drawing, not only in the mind's eye, but actual your in the draw, like actual on the paper. Then also being from Japan, I grew up with anime and manga, and in general, the Asians love visuals. It's just all over. It's more visual than Europe, at least. My wife is from Sweden, and she said, and we live in Manila. Like, this is too much, too visual. We need a little more calm visuals because that's it's everything into your eyes. But I think that's how we grow up, and that's how I can think visually. So I was visual thinker already before I started the coaching, and it was easier for me to visualize what clients were saying in my mind's eye, and then I start drawing while during the sessions. So this is just an example of how visual thinking can work with SF, and this is one of the first infographic that I did when I took the SF coaching class, that problem talk and solution talk. We talk about it, days and textbook, but what happened if I put everything into one infographic in one page? And visual has the power to explain complex and lots of rich information in a simpler way. So I always come back to this one page to remind myself what is the solution talk and stay away from the problem talk. So some benefits of graphic coaching, fostering clarity, creativity, and idea generation. It's a slightly different, so I always ask permission if can I do the graphic coaching, because I know this is not very conventional way. But when I do, most of actually, like, I don't have all of them so far as yes, great. And if I do start drawing, they have really start talking about creative and the big pictures and deeper reflections. And somehow the visual does provide a safer space because they can comment on the visual, not to me or not to them. That point, actually, that is true. And they start putting the connections and they reflect on a question about the questions. So it's kind of a meta level of understanding. And also at the end, I sent one-page summary, just like the previous infographic, but on the handwritten. They say, I remember this. It's kind of easier summary to remember what was the essence of session. So I have 3 case studies or 3 examples. And this one is Mike. He's a Singaporean. A Thai went to Singapore for a short-term assignment. And on the left side, we just started about what's going on and what's been better. So big on the left side and some above there, right? Positive things I do, stir sessions and more exercise. So those are what's been going well. And then at the middle of the coaching session, he started talking about confidence, which he wanted to achieve. And we're talking about the external recognition versus internal acceptance. And he started talking about the mirroring. So I don't know if you see on the dotted line in the middle lower part, that's actually mirror. So we're really talking about the mirrors and dotting him and how do you see yourself. So it's kind of give him like virtual space to see himself in the mirror and how he can build the confidence, not only with the external recognition, but with his own internal acceptance. And this one is with Grace. She's German and working in Manila. And if you see in the middle right side, the scaling from 7 to 8, and I asked her what's the 8 look like, and she so fast, and it's almost like a note taking of everything that she wanted to achieve. And then I listed it all. Then we look at it together. So all the things, actually 7 things that she said. And after all, what is most important thing? And she said, listen, filter like a sponge. So that was more reflection about her own reflection. And the last one, Aaron, is she is Thai. No, sorry, the first one, Mike, was a Singapore, went to the Thai, and this one, Thai, came to Manila. And this was actual very fast speed session, so I really couldn't draw it at the same time. But on the miracle day in the cafeteria, how the actual conversation will look like, and how many people, where you sit, how do you dress, and everything what normally asked as in the SF session, but I try to draw as much as as much details as I can capture. And then at the end, he wanted to put the cape so it looked like a Superman, and he can talk to everybody in the canteen at the lunchtime so that he can build a better relationship. And yeah, this actually gives me the memory of how the discussion or like how the chat was like with him. And I think it does the same to him when he sees this visual. And it's almost time, 10 minutes past, so I will go very quickly. If anyone wants to try or like willing to see what the SF graphic coaching look like, a few things that I keep in mind is that it's not about art, it's about the client, it's about coachee and how he sees it. So anything that I draw, I try to ask, is he right? Going to the goal, is it upward or downwards? Is it full? It's a circle? How does it look like? So that every visual that I create is based on their view. And also I try to draw more solutions than problems, because visual, I have a control of how much things can put into the canvas. So that's it's tough because lots of times the clients talk about the problem, so I don't draw anything. But at the end is something that I can really draw big. And if there's nothing, I keep the empty space, and that actually gives more creativity, I think. And the last part is the erasable material. I always draw and erase and draw and erase because it's very dynamic, and it's not about the art, it's more about the process of coaching. Okay, that's it from me. I'm happy to take any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Keisuke. So Benny, can I hand over to you? Actually, sorry. So Keisuke, if you stop your screen share and then Benny can share his screen. You're on mute, Benny.
Good. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry. Good afternoon. Sorry, rather good evening, everyone. Allow me to just very quickly do a timer because I somehow screwed it up and then I put it out. That's 9 minutes. All right. So good evening. So my name is Benny. I am currently a consultant, a sales performance consultant. Basically, what I do is I help sales organizations build and improve their sales capabilities, as well as performance. And I've been in the business of sales for the last maybe 35 years, including selling and also consulting and teaching people how to sell. So today's conversation is really about how solution focus can be used in a sales conversation. I believe that most of you would think about sales coaching as using coaching in order to help salespeople to sell better. In this case, we're looking at how we apply solutions focus, philosophy, and even methodology into a sales conversation with a client, right? And in process, empowering them to develop and also own the solution that we come up with jointly. So when we think about sales, okay, we usually have a bit of a perception. So very quickly now, I'm just going to go into these few areas in the next 8 minutes or so. And the first thing I'd like to do is just to get your perception of what sales and what sellers and selling is all about. Okay. Because when we think about selling versus coaching, it seems to be very miles apart. They don't seem to align, right? Because sales is more seller-centric. It's really all about what we want to get out of it, whereas coaching is really more focused on what the customers want and helping them to come up with a solution. So let's do a very quick assessment, just to get your opinion. Now, many of us are probably not in sales, but at least for the lifetime that we've had when we started to make buying decisions, we are, at least most of us are buying experts. We are experts in buying things. So I just want you to take a look at these two photos, right? And let me know in a very quick survey afterwards that I'm going to introduce you into, what is your perception or experience of sellers or the sales profession? Okay. So which one do you resonate more in terms of your experience and your expectation and also your perception of what selling is all about? And to do that, quickly just pull up your phone and scan this little barcode there, QR code, and go into Mentimeter in order for us to just get a very quick assessment. If you think that your most of your experience are more aligned with one, just click on one, or vice versa, two. Okay. And in the meantime, let's take a look at what the results show us. So there we go. Okay. All right. It's interesting. So let's pick up which image fits your position, fits your perception or experience about the sales profession. Okay. Okay. Right. We will come back to this in a while, but it looks like we have a bit of a balance. So let me just come back now to this presentation, to continue the presentation. So if your if all of you, if you're uncomfortable about sales, I say most of you are uncomfortable about sales, you're not alone, because if you look at, let's say, the Gallup's ethics rating of professions in the US, which was conducted last year, they came up with some very interesting things. And what I wanted to pick up about, why is ethics so important when it relates to sales? Because if you're selling, just like coaching, you need to be able to, first of all, build trust, win credibility, build trust through your credibility, and also to maintain trust. But here are some very, very interesting results from this is just the US, of course, okay? And we see that for example, the nurses get the highest rating in terms of what their perception of ethics is. But when it comes to sales, right, we have insurance salespeople, the two occasions among the 23 of professions where sales is mentioned, we find that the rating is actually very slow. It's very, very low. And there's a huge disparity in both the perceived ethics, as well as sellers are also consistently rated low. So it's not as if it's been changed over the last few years. It's been consistent for the last few years, right? All right. So this is actually quite interesting. So where does that leave us, with regards to what coaching is versus selling? Well, I think we all know the definition of coaching. What's interesting about coaching is also the fact that we look at the people that we coach as also clients. But in this case, they help them to maximize their personal and professional potential, right? Selling is, on the other hand, is a little bit more towards leading them towards a buying decision. But if you take a look at what buying decisions about, buying decisions by buyers is really about trying to address change. And in addressing change, it is not so simple, especially in B2B. So you may think that this is just a typical sales buying process that they go through, but in reality, there's a lot going on there. So where does that leave us? Well, customers are struggling to decrease, are struggling with change, and they are having trouble making decisions. And likewise, salespeople are also struggling with trying to persuade customers to change, with the solution that they have. So where does it all come in? Well, if selling is about facilitating change, so is coaching. So and the quick question is, can we use coaching philosophy in a sales conversation with clients? Well, we can. There are common denominators that we should look at. In terms of coaching, as well as sales conversation, and I'm referring to the conversation that we have with our buyers and our clients, is this: both are actually working towards trying to come up with a solution for the customer, but there is some slight nuances and differences here. But what's common is that both are client focused, both are solution focused. It is collaborative. That's what real sales professionals should be. Very collaborative. It's not just being pushy. And there is solution ownership by the buyer. It is not just me trying to sell you something and you say that's the best solution for you, but it has to be owned by the buyer. And the expertise is slightly different. The expertise that coaches bring is in facilitating that discovery. Likewise, salespeople do that, except we have an additional piece of expertise, which is our domain expertise on the products and services that we're offering and the problems that we're trying to solve for the clients. Okay, so I have just 2 more minutes left, so I'm just going to move this very, very quickly. And just want to emphasize on the importance of collaboration and solution ownership when it comes to not only coaching, but also in sales conversation. So what I'm trying to demonstrate is that the possibility of actually utilizing coaching, especially the solution-focused coaching philosophy and methodology in a sales conversation, and not feel bad that you're trying to sell, okay? In fact, one of the best outcomes in using SF methodology in the sales conversation is not to be pushy, but to also help the customer to realize, and you yourself too, to say, maybe we are not the right one for you, and maybe there's another way to do it. But at the same time, just very focused on what the customer is trying to achieve. Now, this is where the slight difference is, where the coaches, we are not directive, we are guiding clients. Sellers, in applying SF philosophy and methodology into sales conversation, could and should weave our domain expertise into the conversation, right? And finally, just a very, very quick overview of what that might look like is this little framework that I've been using for a while now. And I'll just use an example that I've had recently with a client. And essentially what the GAPS or G4PS framework is about is trying to guide the customer through a conversation that will take us to agreeing on a solution. And with clients, we will have many, many conversations, and we will have different conversations with different people, right? And so what are some of the examples? In a recent engagement that I had with a client, there were 3 or 4 people, in fact, there were 4 people in a room. And the approach that I take is to find out what exactly do you wish to accomplish, right? So these are just some of the questions to try to figure out what their goal is. And also to look at where you are today. In the context of SF, is about using skill. Where are you now, and what does 6 or 7 look like, right? And 1 point look like, and using a positive tone and know-how about how did you get to this point. In other words, helping them to figure out what can we do more of that will get you there, right? Rather than focusing on a problem. And the rest is really about understanding their priorities and working with them to define what the possibilities are, including bringing in our expertise, right, in that conversation. And finally, summarizing and planning on the next step. And we will be coming back to this conversation over and over again, through multiple instances throughout the entire sales cycle, especially if it's a long, complex one. So that is in a nutshell where the coaching and the sales conversation can actually be, the common denominators we can actually apply with solution focus, right? In order to work with the customer to come up with the right kind of solution. And finally, just remember that selling isn't shoving, and selling is about solving, okay? So if, this is a quick snapshot for you to communicate, if you want to hook up with me, and I will stop my presentation here. Right. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Benny. That's really, really interesting. Certainly when we talked about including your chapter, I was a bit like, how does sales fit with coaching? And it's just such a wonderful chapter, and you've done a wonderful job presenting. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to Edwin Choy now, who is in China, and he's going to be presenting on working with fathers in the prison system. Edwin, over to you.
Thank you for allowing me to share. I hope I can do it as quick as possible. 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to revamp our fathering program in the prisons. And guess what? Since I'm a solution-focused coach, I would like to infuse SF coaching into the work in prison. So what happens typically in the prison training for fathers is that they will give us a group of 10 fathers, and we'll work with them for a period of time. So we normally spend about 4 sessions with them in the past, since 8 years ago. But after the revamp, it became a 12-week session, and we call it I Can Change. Whole idea is to help them be more hopeful about what will happen when they are out of prison. So from survivor to thriver there. This is a series of lessons that we use change as an acronym. So it means connect with the family, hope for a new future, aware of its new strengths, nurture the children, grow in small steps, and equip himself with new skills. So when they start the session, we help them think, help them imagine that the future can be quite different. There are some things they don't like out of the past, but there's something they like out of the past. And then we help them describe the future they want in terms of their family, their work, and their habits and choices. What they don't like about my life in the past, and what they like about their life, what they want instead for the family, for the work, for habit choice. So they get kind of a brief vision of the future, which they will describe later in greater detail for each one of them. The first session we do actually is to bring the wives into the prison. And we have a marriage enrichment workshop, solution focus way. And the idea is that if the wives and the children are supportive and welcoming of the father, By the time this father is out of prison and goes back home, he'll be well received by the wife and the children, and that's already 50% of the better one. And so when the wives come into the prison for a session, never done before, the wives will have an opportunity with the husband for 3 solid hours, sitting side by side with the husband, and the whole time we talk about hopeful questions, questions like, what has been most difficult since we were separated? How did you manage that? And then they get a chance to describe the future that they wanted, my best hope in marriage. And so at the end of the session, the feedback from them is that they feel like they have never communicated at depth before as husband and wife, and they feel like there's something they can work together even while they're in prison currently. So beyond that, they talk about next small steps even while they're in prison. They small things they could do to improve their marriage while they're in prison. The next one, when they get together, we help them kind of imagine what's possible for them, giving them hopeful belief. I have some positive belief, and giving them some confidence that I can be a good dad, because that's the main part of the training, is to be a good father to the children. And then there'll be things that they can learn while they're in prison and out of prison that can help improve their lives. So each week we go through things like that. So like, for example, in the I Can Learn Life Skills segment, they will list down the column on the left is some examples, but they'll write down the life skills they want to learn. And to motivate them to want to learn this further, we ask the question, how is this helpful for you? So interesting thing is that they always start each morning, each session with what has been going on well so far. So 1 week has passed, we go there once a week for 3 hours, and they will constantly describe what went well each week. And some of them will say, well, what went well is that coming to this workshop. As always, very motivating, encouraging when they come to this workshop. So this is our I Can Fathering workshop. I'm in China right now doing that. We also help them kind of use the scale to describe their best hopes in 4 areas: fathering, career, marriage, health. And so they scale themselves. So in terms of children, where they are currently, and then we'll ask them, fathering, what have been doing well, and the same for marriage, health, and career. And then we help them move one small step at a time. And so they learn SF scaling message. So at the end of each session, every father will share, for example, if it is a segment on the change they need to make in the next small step, each father will express, this is what I hope to be doing in the coming week. And every session, every father will clap for the one person who either share the success so far or the next small steps that they're going to take in prison. So basically, I think I'm going to end right here. Basically, that's the approach, to give them a time to imagine a new future where things will be different for them outside the prison, for them as a father, for them as a husband, for them in a career, and for them in terms of their health. I've got stories to share, but I think we don't have time, so I'll leave it to the next speaker right now.
Wonderful, thank you, Edwin. I think everybody's just like whetting appetites. Like, oh, we need to know more. We need to know more. But thank you for that wonderful summary of the work you do in prison. Okay, so the last presenter is Dian Handayani, and sadly she can't be with us tonight, but she sent a recording. So I'm just going to share my screen with you and send over the PowerPoint to her recording.
Sex coaching, particularly within the framework of solution focus, offer a promising approach to address sexual issues. And so this presentation will explore the integration of SF coaching principles in addressing sexual shame to facilitate effective coaching outcome. And so I'm Dian. I'm a certified sexologist, sex coach, and sex therapist. I'm also an advanced SF practitioner and an art psychotherapist with passion in working around sex essential concern. I want to start the presentation with the story of Tini, and she's not a real name, not a real case story, or even a real picture of her. She is an amalgamation of struggles that my Asian female clients, especially Indonesian clients, are facing. They are mostly in the mid-50s, and our Tinis are premenopausal ladies who are experiencing drastic change in their life, namely aging. And with physiological changes, psychological and relationship changes also follow. The presentation of Tini, usually they begin withdrawal from sex as they begin to experience pain. Maybe they no longer feel good about their aging body. They feel inadequate for their husband anymore, no longer feel or think that they no longer look attractive for their husband. And after a while, this withdrawal or refusal can cause a rift in the relationship with their husband and perpetuate a sense of shame, guilt, even fear, because that Tini could no longer fulfill her wifely or religious duty towards her husband. They fear that the husband will leave the marriage, for example. Stories like Tini is very commonly heard in many Asian countries, especially in Indonesia, where religious, conservative, and traditional values around sexuality is still strong. And Indonesia itself is the world's fourth most populous country, with almost 90% of population there is Muslim. And within this context, a discussion around sex and sexuality are considered taboo and even sinful, especially discussed outside marriage. And so the social script or narrative around sex will be centered around fulfilling social, cultural, and religious obligations. And it is commonly considered sex is the husband's prerogative, and the wife's role is to fulfill his needs. And quite often these beliefs are reinforced and justified through many religious doctrines that equate obedience to one's husband as a part of religious duty. And quite often the culture can stigmatize women who openly discuss, initiate, or even express their sexual desires, and they could be labeled as bad women. And so consequently, many women believe that refusing sex or even being overtly sexual with their own husband can be seen as either sinful or taboo. And they fear negative backlash from their own husband, family, and community. And in return, it can bring a sense of shame and failure. So Tini experience and feeling of shame and guilt is known as sexual shame. And sexual shame is a specific form of shame or feeling and experience of disgust and humiliation towards our own sexuality and as a sexual being. Our sexuality itself includes our sex, gender, desire, attraction to others, and quite often this can be very personal and not changeable, just like Tini's aging body. And usually the societal norms, expectations, and cultural values play a very important part in development of sexual shame. One of the research suggests that there are 3 parts of anatomy of sexual shame, and these are relationship sexual shame, internalized sexual shame, and sexual inferiority. If we are to unpack Tini's story, we could say that Tini is experiencing relationship sexual shame, where she withdraws from her husband as she no longer feels that her aging body is adequate enough to satisfy her husband. We can also identify Tini's own internalized sexual shame, where she feels abnormal and shameful that her body no longer functions like before. And also sexual inferiority, where Tini feels she can no longer fulfill her wifely or religious duty to her husband. And hardly surprising, Tini will then begin to feel fearful and concerned that her husband will leave her or begin an affair, and such the cycle of inferiority and anxiety ensue. As we hear Tini's story, some of you will begin to feel sad for her or feel intense pain. Maybe you pick up a feeling of loneliness that is faced by Tini, and all these feelings are valid. In fact, Brené Brown has a good definition of shame, which is intensely painful feeling or experience that we are not worthy of connection with others, just like Tini withdrawing from her husband, not worthy of connection with him. And indeed, shame can manifest in feeling of helplessness, inadequacy, feeling defect, and feeling inferior. And it can impact our intrapersonal health, relationship, and related to other negative outcomes. And so traditionally, coaching has been focused on behavior change and sidelined the emotional exploration. However, I hope as we walk through the Tini's experience and all the definition and understanding, now we cannot ignore the role of emotion in coaching, especially in the sensitive area like sexuality. And in fact, some research suggests that neglecting emotion can even hinder the coaching process. As such, embracing emotion, including feeling of shame, is very important to understand clients' experience and fostering empowerment. In the SF approach to sex coaching, there are 3 key strategies. So first is to create a safe space. Sex coaches should prioritize creating a comfortable and supportive environment for clients to express their emotion without judgment. And this involves active listening to clients' emotional language and ensuring they feel heard and understood. And second one is really pay attention to emotional cues, and coaches should pay close attention to both positive and negative emotional cues from clients, including nonverbal signals. By identifying these cues, coaches can help clients to shift from negative problem talk into desired preferred behavior or experience and preferred future. And lastly, use solution building languages. You can really guide clients toward positive outcomes by reframing observation into immersive experiences using SF language. This involves slow and steady reflection, repetition, invitational language, incorporating our client's own imagery and emotion to enhance the experience of positive change. For example, like supposing we have a magic wand that can take a tiny blip of shame around your body, or supposing we have a magic wand that adds a blip of confidence in you. What difference can we see between you and your husband in intimacy? Oh, you'll be more open for him to stroke your back and kiss you. How's that like? How's that feeling like, right? Instead of pushing him away. As such, by embodying positive emotion and imagery, clients can then tap into their own resource to achieve the preferred outcome. And of course, we need to be aware of the challenges when working with emotion in coaching. And these are: be patient, attend to your own emotional well-being, be prepared for clients to take multiple sessions to emerge from challenging, shameful emotion. We need to continue to affirm, be aware of their positive embodiment, staying alert to any sign of positive emotion, and attend to our own emotional regulation too. Mindfulness can be helpful as well, and of course supervision. And also apply caution. So we need to be aware when the boundary between therapy and coaching are. Usually therapy delves into past issue, encourages more sharing of personal problem and emotion. So coaching emphasizes learning process, and focus is to remain on the present and the future. And also we must always follow client's lead, move at their pace, so that we can align with their objective and purpose, and keep to the ethics of coaching, and avoid seeking deeper meaning. This is also important because that is a realm of therapy. And also important to refer out to specialists when appropriate, because sexual trauma is another contributing factor to sexual shame, and it can present in the sex coaching environment. So it's always good to have other provider that you can collaborate with. In summary, incorporating solution-focused principles into sex coaching offer a promising pathway to address sexual issue and working with sexual shame, especially within the Indonesian and Asian cultural context. And with this, I thank you for your attention, and it's now over to you, Jane.
Okay, fantastic. So we've had 4 very different presentations of people using SF coaching in all sorts of different settings. So we would love to know what you've been inspired by, any ideas that you've heard today that you might want to take forward into your own practice. So let me put those questions back in the chat. I think I put them earlier. So I'm going to put everybody in breakout rooms for 10 minutes to discuss what you've heard, what you've been inspired by, and then we'll come back to the main room, and we'd love to hear some sharing from what's happened in the breakout rooms, but also if you've got any questions for any of our presenters, you'll have opportunity. So I will see you guys back in 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We hope you've had lots of exciting conversations in your breakout rooms. So the rest of today, we haven't got anything else to share. So we'd love to hear some of those conversations, what you've been inspired by, or if you have any questions for the presenters. So if you would like to either share the reflections or ask a question, if you do the raise hand icon, and then I will come to you in order. And while we're talking, Keisuke is going to do some live graphic coaching and capture our conversations. So I won't put his screen on large at the moment, because otherwise we won't be able to all see each other. Well, you can still change yours if you want to, and we can have a look, and then I'll make it big at the end so that everybody can see what you've drawn. So yeah, we'd love to hear what have you been inspired by, or questions for the presenters. Who would like to share? Or you can pop questions in the chat. That's also okay. Or is everybody just getting to the end of a long day on Friday, or the beginning of, depending where you are in the world? Everybody's just tired. It's a Friday evening. Okay, Sharon.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I was really inspired by the different applications of solution focus, particularly I was talking with the ladies in my group that I think the 2 parts of it. So one of it is SF an application, unusual application in an industry that you don't normally think about. And then the other one is actually using a skill to show up in the actual SF coaching that was unexpected. Yeah, so I think in the course of processing with the ladies, I suddenly was inspired because I'm a cook. I cook at home, but I'm also a solution-focused coach. So the idea I want to try with, either my next client or a friend is actually bring my coachee into the kitchen and use that as, kind of like the metaphor or like it won't be a piece of paper. It's actually like something we're going to cook together. And Elena from Switzerland was was my chat buddy, and she suggested, yeah, you know, like just to say that, do you want a bit, what would you like your life to be a little bit more, or a bit more spicy, you know, add a spice. But, you know, it's just giving a whole new language to the coachee to kind of, you know, play around with and yeah, be a bit more specific about what they're looking for in their preferable future. So yeah, I was really very, very blessed by the conversation. Yeah.
Wonderful. I love that. Yeah, being even more creative and bringing, you know, one of your strengths and passions to the coaching process. Wonderful. We'll go to Cassia, and then there's a question in the chat. So Cassia, over to, I don't know if I've said your name right, but over to you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank for this opportunity to have a chat, because it was very uncommon on these big conferences to have this opportunity. And Sharon, you've got the same metaphor for SF as me, a culinary, a kitchen, working together in your own kitchen. But I have a question for Keisuke. It was an amazing presentation and really tapped into my fresh fascination with narrative therapy. So I would like to ask you actually a very how-to question. I was wondering whether you use an iPad to draw, or maybe you go like with a big sheet of paper and you do it with the client, or you just ask for the client input during the session and you do the drawing yourself. Could you please describe the more practicalities of the session?
Sure. Happy to. Thank you very much for the question, Kathy. Right now, I'm drawing with the tablet, and virtually I draw this or iPad, either way, and that works online. On face-to-face, I just do my sketchbook and yeah, do paper, anything. It's really not art is important, but like actual graphic. I can do it with napkins actually. And something. It's just more of whatever comes handy for you. That's the best way to start, I guess.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Eleanor had a question. Debbie, I'm going to hand this one to you. She was wondering, how big is SF in Asia in comparison to other coaching or therapy approaches? I'm not sure whether any of us know the answer to that, but would you like to take that on and
give a stab? Do you mean big in popularity or in numbers? Elena?
not clear?
Are you here, Elena?
Oh, she's added something, both.
Oh, okay. Well, if you Google if you just Google the top, I did this a few times, Google the top 5 coaching models. Solution focus shows up twice. It shows up as Oscar and it shows up as SF. And I suppose people in the non-SF world don't know that those are the same thing. And so it is considered one of the top coaching models, oddly enough. In Singapore, because we've been here since 2004, using solution focus coaching and certification, the community is quite big in Singapore, and now it's more global. So we have Coaching Circle, we have Coaches Exchange, different platforms. It grows every year because we have 5 or 6 cohorts. Compared to other models, I don't really know, because I'm not really tied to Coactive or NLP, or I don't really know the size of other coaching communities. In talking to other students, there generally isn't the same kind of community and long-term connectedness like we have in SF world. Usually cohorts go through the program and they're kind of go off on their own. Whereas we tend to retain cohorts, for 10 years, and they're very active in our community. So that's probably not the answer that you're looking for. You maybe you're looking for exact numbers. I can't provide that, sorry.
Hey, thanks, Debbie. Okay, who else would like to share reflections, what the talks have sparked off for you, or any questions? Everybody's very quiet. Yes, Kylie.
Sorry, I wasn't fast enough to work out how to electronically put up my hand. Yeah, I'd just like to say I really appreciated all of the talks. I found the first one very interesting, and it certainly sparked some ideas about maybe what I could do with clients. I use a whiteboard in my sessions, but I don't think I'm as competent as our young man who was doing that. Sorry, I don't think I can. Keisuke. Yeah, and I really love the second one too by Benny. I guess, as I said to him, I'm never been remotely interested in selling, and I have usually thought about sellers as someone who just tries to take advantage of you. But listening to his talk made me feel really glad that he's out there working with and teaching in that field, because it sounded like he teaches very ethical selling approaches that really consider what the buyer wants. So that was very comforting and quite interesting for me. And I really enjoyed Edwin's talk as well. I come from working 20 years in the prison system, so doing anything with people in prison is really close to my heart, and I loved some of the ideas, and I actually really want to hear more. So yeah, I'd love to be able to chat further later on. And I also found the last one quite interesting as well. Yeah, it would have been great if we had her in person, but I really appreciate the fact that she sent a video. And I made a few notes as well. That was she said quite a lot of interesting things that will give me things to think about, because I think there's some crossover here in Cambodia as well with the way women think and their the expectations that are on them in marriages. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Great job.
Well, thank
you
you
so much.
too. Thank you for your kind compliments. And we've put the website of the SF Academy in the chat if you want to connect with us, because one of our team is actually based in Cambodia. So if you want to link up with somebody who's also in Cambodia, we can link you. So on the website, the details. Actually, I don't think our book is on the website yet, because it's not out. It's not published till August. But all of the presentations go into a lot more detail in the book chapters. All of the graphics are also in the chapters. One of you asked whether the slides are available. I will have to check with the SF24 team. Obviously, the recording will be available afterwards for you to rewatch. And given that I missed Debbie's, I forgot to start the recording. We will do that again at the end, so everything is on the video. But maybe, because I want to make sure we finish on time, maybe Keisuke, can I hand over to you to share what I can see you drawing and what today has sparked off for you?
Today, this is the first time that I actually present and draw. So my part was really tiny because I couldn't draw and present at the same time. But my key takeaway from today's session is, I don't know if you see that light blue dot, that everything start connecting, like bits and pieces of Asian culture and sales and prisons and sex coaching, graphic, and SFs in the kitchen. All things are slightly like everything is some essence that goes toward the other applications and practices. So that's my key takeaway from today's session.
Oh, I'm so in awe of you. That's just amazing to just sketch. But here's what I did earlier. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Wow.
Okay. Wonderful. So any last comments or questions before we finish for this evening? Debbie, I don't know if you want to, or any of the presenters, if any of you want to kind of share any final thoughts.
Well, I just want to invite anybody who's interested. We have a monthly coaches circle, solution focused coaches circle, which is just an exchange of coaches in the SF space, and we have different topics. It's free, and anybody is welcome to join, and other things online. But we would love to get to know you, especially if you're, our brothers and sisters in the region close to Singapore.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for your kind attention, your questions and participation. Thanks so much to all the presenters. That was fantastic. And even though I've read your chapters, it's so different when seeing you present it in real life. It really brings it to life. So thank you everybody, and enjoy the rest of SF24.
Thank you.
Okay, so hi Debbie. As I forgot to record the start of our presentation today on the history development of SF coaching in Asia, I'm just, for those of you who missed it and are watching this afterwards, I'm just going to hand you back to Debbie to present the slides we missed at the beginning. So over to you, Debbie.
Yes, so it's a very condensed summary, just giving a little highlight of how we have developed coaching in Asia. And through the years, I've had conversations with different people in different locations, and especially to the lead up for our book, people in China, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Philippines, Vietnam, and Cambodia specifically, to just find out what they know about coaching, SF coaching in the region. And in talking to people, all the names that kept popping up were the names that are on the screen: Mark McCurgo, Peter Szabo, Kirsten Dieroff, and Hae-Sin Moon. And it seems like the Academy also was named, and we are part of the development of coaching and certification in Asia. So you can go to the next slide, Jane. And so in 2004, we started the Academy to provide SF training and therapy and coaching. And we were the first to bring solution-focused certification to Singapore. And I remember having a conversation with Insu. She was not really in favor of certification, but I I felt I had a very strong feeling that coaching was going to grow and to really become more of a presence in Asia. And I told her, in Singapore, people want to sign up for courses, but they want it to lead to something. And so when I sort of suggested that was a good, compelling reason, she agreed. And so in 2004, we became certified or accredited with the CCPC, the Canadian Council of Professional Certification. And in those years, they only offered certification in therapy and as a practitioner. And I just had a feeling that coaching was going to really grow, and it has grown. But at that point, back in 2004, I appealed to the board of the CCPC. And at first, they pushed back and said, no, coaches could take the practitioner designation. But after I just kept pushing, they agreed. And to their credit, they realized too that it was probably a good idea, and it's really grown. Coaching is exploding in Asia. Then in 2010, we had a certification with IASTI, International Alliance of Solution-Focused Teaching Institutes, and we're a founding member. We were invited by Luc Isbert and Yvonne Dolan, and we helped them to create the certification that's now on their website. Then in 2016, we became accredited with the ICF, International Coaching Foundation, where now we can offer all three levels, level 1, 2, 3, ACC, PCC, and MCC. And then, because of COVID, we were doing all face-to-face, and now with COVID, it became online. And then with more students and then more countries, we're actually more of a global organization. And it subsequently spread to other regions in Asia, but also to other continents like the US, Europe, of course, Singapore, like in Rwanda, Mongolia, China, India, Malaysia, Cambodia, Sri Lanka. And then our team, we have 15 people on our team, and they're all in different countries. So the coaching has really become quite a thing, and it's growing, constantly growing, and the demand and the appetite for coaching is growing.
Wonderful, thank you.